Imagine this, you're checking your bank account, and suddenly everything's more expensive. Electronics, energy bills, the whole 9 yards. Now here's the kicker, these price hikes. They stem from a mere 0.7 percentage point disagreement between the world's two most trusted economic institutions. They can't even agree on whether our global economy is thriving or struggling. This isn't some hypothetical scenario. This is exactly what happened in August 2025. The International Monetary Fund projected global growth at 3%, calling the outlook tentatively resilient. Meanwhile, the World Bank slashed its forecast to just 2.3%, citing heightened trade tensions and policy uncertainty. That disagreement might sound abstract, but it's already hitting your wallet. Shipping costs across Southeast Asia jumped 10% as businesses scramble to reroute supply chains. For households worldwide, this translates into fluctuating prices on everyday goods and uncertainty about job markets. Welcome to your August 2025 Global Interconnectedness Update. This month revealed a fascinating paradox. While traditional global institutions struggled with basic consensus, innovative local and regional solutions flourished. The UN's Plastic Pollution Treaty talks collapsed on August 14th, despite 175 nations participating. Yet the Green Climate Fund successfully channeled money directly to communities in West Papua for forest restoration. Meanwhile, Southeast Asian nations coordinated their first-ever Regional Artificial Intelligence Summit on August 12th and 13th in Kuala Lumpur, creating governance frameworks while global AI debates remained fragmented. August 2025 showed us something crucial. The future of international cooperation isn't necessarily about getting everyone to agree on everything. Instead, we're seeing targeted partnerships, regional coordination, and direct community action delivering concrete results where traditional diplomacy fails. Today, we'll explore how these shifts in global cooperation are reshaping your economic opportunities, the technologies you use, and the environmental changes of August 2025 revealed international cooperation transforming from broad consensus-seeking to targeted problem-solving. Rather than waiting for universal agreements, regions, communities, and specialized organizations found ways to collaborate directly on specific challenges. The month's dominant pattern? Institutional fragmentation creating space for innovation. When 175 nations couldn't agree on plastic pollution rules through the UN system, during the 5th Intergovernmental Negotiating Committee session that concluded August 14th, the failure didn't stop environmental progress. It redirected it. The Green Climate Fund bypassed traditional government-to-government channels entirely. They funded local organizations in Indonesia's West Papua province to restore forests and prevent fires. This result-based payment model proves that international environmental action can proceed without diplomatic consensus. Similarly, when global economic institutions offered conflicting growth projections, regional organizations stepped forward with coordinated responses. The Association of Southeast Asian Nations, ASEAN, held its inaugural AI Summit in Kuala Lumpur on August 12th and 13th. Over 1,500 participants, including policymakers and industry leaders, came together to create sustainable, secure, and inclusive AI futures, tailored specifically to Southeast Asian values and economic needs. Rather than waiting for global AI governance frameworks that might never emerge, these 10 nations are building their own coordinated approach. The concrete outcomes? Malaysia launched its national cloud computing policy, and Huawei committed to train 30,000 AI talents across the region. This pattern extended across domains. When Iran nuclear diplomacy collapsed through the European powers' activation of UN sanctions, snapback mechanisms, other regions doubled down on their own security cooperation frameworks. When traditional economic forecasting created uncertainty, Emerging economies through BRICS explored independent financing mechanisms for critical mineral development. Here's what this transformation reflects: growing confidence that effective international cooperation doesn't require everyone's participation, just the right participants with shared interests and compatible capabilities. Regional organizations like ASEAN, direct community partnerships like the Green Climate Fund model, and sector-specific professional networks demonstrate alternative pathways for international cooperation. For individuals worldwide, this shift creates both opportunities and challenges. You may see faster progress on issues that matter to your community through regional cooperation or direct international partnerships, even if global institutions remain gridlocked. However, you'll also navigate increased complexity as different regions develop different standards for everything from AI governance to environmental protection to digital trade rules. The economic story of August 2025 centers on fundamental uncertainty about global cooperation's direction, with immediate consequences for household budgets and business planning worldwide. The stark disagreement between the IMF and World Bank, that 0.7 percentage point gap in growth projections, represents more than statistical variance. It reveals deep uncertainty about whether current geopolitical tensions strengthen or weaken the economic foundations of international cooperation. The World Bank's pessimistic 2.3% growth forecast emphasizes heightened trade tensions and policy uncertainty, and weaker external demand. This reflects concerns that political fragmentation undermines the institutional foundations needed for trade, investment, and economic growth. Meanwhile, the IMF's optimistic 3% projection focuses on tentative resilience and improved financial conditions, suggesting confidence that global financial systems can weather political instability. These conflicting assessments create tangible problems for business planning and household financial decisions. Importers across Southeast Asia report 10% increases in shipping costs from key ports in Thailand, Vietnam, Malaysia, and Indonesia. Container rates are reaching $900 to $1,100 USD per TEU as companies reroute supply chains to avoid potential trade disruptions. Corporate managers face difficulty planning cross-border investments when leading economic institutions can't agree on basic growth trends. For consumers, this uncertainty translates into fluctuating commodity prices and unpredictable employment prospects in trade-dependent sectors. The digital economy presents even starker inequalities. The UN Conference on Trade and Development, UNCTAD, documented that despite 12% global growth in digital economy investments, developing countries captured only 8% of greenfield information and communications technology projects. This creates what UNCTAD calls digital neocolonialism, where developing regions integrate into global digital systems as consumers rather than creators of technology. For workers worldwide, this digital divide creates divergent opportunities. In regions receiving major digital investments, new technology sector employment drives wage growth and skill development. However, in areas bypassed by digital infrastructure investment, workers face increasing disadvantage in accessing global economic opportunities, potentially widening income inequality both within and between nations. Regional responses to these challenges show promise. ASEAN's coordinated approach to AI governance and digital trade creates frameworks that help member countries avoid digital dependency while capturing technology benefits. The Huawei APAC AI Ecosystem Initiative, announced at the ASEAN AI Summit, commits to training 30,000 AI talents over 3 years. This demonstrates how regional partnerships can build local capacity. The World Economic Forum's focus on Southern Africa's critical minerals, addressing a $9 billion financing shortfall across 10 countries, shows how targeted regional cooperation can advance global objectives like renewable energy deployment while creating local employment and development opportunities. Alternative financing mechanisms gained momentum. BRICS nations explored independent mineral development funds, while the Green Climate Fund's direct community grants to West Papua demonstrate how international development financing can bypass national governments entirely when local capacity exists for effective implementation. The Jackson Hole Economic Symposium's focus on labor market transitions and demographic headwinds added another layer of uncertainty for central bankers navigating policy frameworks amid these conflicting economic signals. Global bond markets reflected this uncertainty, with U.S. 10-year yields rising from 3.8% to 4.1% as investors sought higher returns for increased risk. Cross-border portfolio equity outflows from emerging markets reached $12 billion, driven by concerns about weakening consumer demand in developed economies. However, green bond issuance surged 18% month-on-month, as institutional investors sought climate-aligned assets despite broader volatility. For individuals, these economic forces translate into greater uncertainty about traditional career paths dependent on global trade. But they also create new opportunities emerging from regional technology partnerships, climate finance initiatives, and digital cooperation frameworks that can deliver benefits even when broader global economic cooperation faces challenges. International organizations experienced a month of stark contrasts, with some demonstrating continued effectiveness while others struggled with basic consensus building amid intensifying geopolitical tensions. The United Nations system revealed both its limitations and enduring value. The failure of UNEP's plastic pollution treaty talks, despite 175 nations participating in the 5th Intergovernmental Negotiating Committee session that concluded August 14th, highlighted how geopolitical complexities, economic challenges, and multilateral strains can prevent progress on shared planetary challenges. UNEP Executive Director Inger Anderson acknowledged that countries want to remain at the table despite the setback. But this outcome leaves consumers and businesses without clear global standards for packaging, recycling systems, and toxic chemical management, prolonging regulatory uncertainty that affects everything from product costs to municipal waste management planning. However, other UN agencies demonstrated continued effectiveness. UNESCO's World Water Development Report successfully created shared scientific understanding of mountain glaciers as water towers for billions of people. It provided frameworks for international cooperation on water security that transcends political boundaries. The World Health Organization and UNICEF's joint report finding 2.1 billion people without safe drinking water access mobilized renewed donor commitments toward Sustainable Development Goal 6. This shows how evidence-based reporting can drive practical cooperation. ASEAN emerged as a standout example of effective regional cooperation. Malaysia's hosting of the inaugural ASEAN AI Summit brought together over 1,500 participants, including policymakers and industry leaders, to develop frameworks for sustainable, secure, and inclusive AI futures, specifically tailored to Southeast Asian contexts. This proactive approach to technology governance, harmonizing national strategies, aligning data governance standards, and promoting responsible AI adoption, enables these 10 nations to shape their technological development collectively rather than simply adopting technologies developed elsewhere. The summit's practical outcomes include Malaysia's national cloud computing policy launch, interagency collaboration initiatives, and small and medium enterprise enablement programs designed to lower AI adoption costs and expand safe usage across public services and commerce. The Huawei APAC AI ecosystem initiative to train 30,000 AI talents over 3 years, demonstrates concrete private sector commitments emerging from regional coordination. For residents across Southeast Asia, this coordination means improved access to digital healthcare, education platforms, and city services, with privacy and accountability built in by design. International financial institutions faced credibility challenges. The stark disagreement between IMF and World Bank economic forecasts complicated policy planning for finance ministers and central bank governors worldwide, making international economic coordination more difficult when clear guidance is most needed. However, both institutions maintained innovative work. The IMF advancing offline central bank digital currency solutions for financial inclusion, while the World Bank emphasized city-level growth initiatives and guarantee mechanisms. The World Economic Forum demonstrated continued relevance through its targeted approach to Southern Africa's critical minerals. It provided concrete pathways for addressing the $9 billion financing shortfall that constrains renewable energy supply chains. Rather than attempting broad multilateral negotiations, WEF's focus on practical cooperation models offers actionable frameworks for managing risks and opportunities in increasingly fragmented global cooperation landscapes. The Green Climate funds approval of result-based payment grants to West Papua's provincial government represents a revolutionary shift in how international cooperation can function when traditional diplomacy fails. Unlike conventional climate financing that flows through national governments and often gets delayed by bureaucratic processes, this innovative funding mechanism will directly support forest rehabilitation and fire prevention programs implemented by local partners, specifically the Samtana Institute. This model circumvents the geopolitical complexities, economic challenges, and multilateral strains that paralyzed UN plastic treaty negotiations. It empowers local actors to implement climate solutions without requiring diplomatic consensus. The West Papua grant focuses on tangible, measurable outcomes: forest restoration, sustainable land management, and fire prevention. That can be monitored independently of political relationships while creating local jobs and delivering environmental benefits directly to communities. For residents of West Papua, this means immediate employment opportunities in forest restoration work. It means improved air quality from reduced fire incidents and enhanced food security through sustainable land management practices. The funding creates accountability relationships between international institutions and local implementers that are less vulnerable to changes in national political priorities or international relations. The approach advances Sustainable Development Goal 13 on climate action at the provincial level, proving that decentralized funding can complement or substitute for global agreements when state-level diplomacy fails. Indonesia is preparing to utilize approximately $90 million in climate fund resources to meet its forest emission reduction targets. Other international institutions are exploring similar direct partnership approaches, potentially creating scalable alternatives to traditional multilateral cooperation frameworks. Current implementation involves training local communities in fire prevention techniques, establishing sustainable forest management protocols, and creating monitoring systems that can verify environmental outcomes for international funders. The project provides technical training that builds local capacity for long-term environmental stewardship while generating immediate income for participating communities. Looking ahead 1 to 5 years, this direct community financing model could inspire similar approaches across multiple domains where global consensus is difficult, but local action is possible and measurable. The success of this approach suggests international cooperation's future may feature networks of direct partnerships between international institutions and local implementing organizations. This creates decentralized progress that delivers measurable improvements in specific contexts while building toward broader environmental goals. August 2025's most significant geopolitical development was the formal collapse of the Iran nuclear agreement through the European powers' activation of UN sanctions snapback mechanisms. The UK, France, and Germany notified the UN Security Council of Iran's significant non-performance, including uranium enrichment violations and restricted inspector access, triggering the restoration of all pre-existing UN sanctions unless prevented within 30 days. This decision elevates regional security risks and affects global energy markets through increased shipping insurance costs in Middle Eastern waterways and heightened commodity price volatility. For consumers worldwide, this translates into potential energy price increases and supply chain disruptions that could affect everything from fuel costs to manufacturing inputs dependent on stable regional trade routes. The snapback activation demonstrates how complex multilateral agreements can be formally dismantled when trust erodes and compliance mechanisms fail. Russia and China's sharp criticism of the move as counterproductive highlights major power divisions that complicate future arms control and security cooperation efforts. Despite traditional security challenges, climate security emerged as a cooperation driver. UNESCO's emphasis on mountain glaciers as water towers for billions created shared scientific understanding of environmental security challenges that require coordinated responses regardless of political relationships. The World Health Organization and World Meteorological Organization's joint guidance on workplace heat stress provided practical frameworks for protecting workers and maintaining economic stability as extreme heat intensifies. Regional security partnerships strengthened through practical cooperation initiatives. The African Union's continued engagement in peace and security issues during Tokyo International Conference on African Development discussions demonstrated resilience in regional conflict prevention efforts. ASEAN's comprehensive security approach, encompassing economic, environmental, and human security dimensions, provides frameworks for cooperation that can withstand broader political tensions. For military and security planners worldwide, climate security considerations are becoming central rather than peripheral to strategic planning. Environmental cooperation represents one area where international collaboration may remain strong even when traditional diplomatic relationships deteriorate, creating foundations for sustained cooperation on shared challenges. August 2025 marked a critical inflection point in global technology governance. OpenAI's release of GPT-OSS open-weight models forced immediate policy responses worldwide, moving artificial intelligence governance from theoretical frameworks to urgent practical challenges. By providing public access to frontier-level AI system parameters, this decision triggered intense global discussions about responsible AI development and the balance between innovation, transparency, and security risks. The OECD's AI platform immediately framed the challenge around balancing innovation, transparency, and risk. This illustrates how international organizations struggle to provide governance frameworks for rapidly evolving technologies. Policy frameworks are increasingly reactive rather than proactive, with governance discussions unable to keep pace with technical capabilities and their societal implications. ASEAN's response through its inaugural AI summit represents a more coordinated approach. Southeast Asian nations collectively developed sustainable, secure, and inclusive AI futures tailored to regional values. The summit brought together over 1,500 participants, with focus on harmonizing national strategies, aligning data governance standards, and promoting responsible AI through coordinated policy frameworks. This enables these countries to shape their technological development collectively rather than simply adopting technologies developed elsewhere. This regional coordination helps avoid the digital neocolonialism identified by UNCTAD, where developing regions become technology consumers rather than creators. The Huawei APAC AI Ecosystem Initiative's commitment to train 30,000 AI talents over 3 years demonstrates how regional partnerships create opportunities for local innovation and career development, while ensuring AI benefits are more equitably distributed within the region. Digital connectivity continues reshaping social cooperation through initiatives like the 5th ASEAN-India Youth Summit. This brought together over 100 young leaders using digital diplomacy tools to facilitate international cooperation that bypasses traditional diplomatic channels. This youth-focused engagement creates potentially more resilient foundations for long-term international collaboration by building relationships among future leaders. For young professionals across Asia, these digital diplomacy initiatives create career pathways spanning national boundaries while focusing on regional cooperation. The emphasis on education and human capital development through UNESCO's World Summit on Teachers, adopting the Santiago Consensus on education investment, demonstrates how professional networks can advance international cooperation through sector-specific collaboration that proceeds independently of broader political relationships. August 2025 revealed sustainability cooperation thriving through innovative mechanisms even as traditional environmental diplomacy struggled. While UNEP's plastic treaty talks collapsed on August 14 due to geopolitical tensions, the Green Climate Fund's direct community financing to West Papua demonstrates how climate action can bypass diplomatic gridlock entirely through result-based payments to local implementing organizations. This direct-to-community funding model enables forest restoration and fire prevention programs to proceed based on technical merit and local capacity rather than political alignment. It creates measurable environmental gains while generating employment opportunities for participating communities. Indonesia's preparation to utilize approximately $90 million in climate fund resources to meet forest emission reduction targets exemplifies this approach. The World Economic Forum's focus on securing minerals for energy transition through targeted regional approaches addresses the $9 billion financing shortfall across 10 southern African countries, demonstrating how practical cooperation on specific challenges can advance global sustainability objectives. Water security drives practical cooperation that transcends political boundaries. UNESCO's World Water Development Report on mountain glaciers creates shared scientific understanding of water challenges affecting billions globally. Meanwhile, WHO and UNICEF's finding that 2.1 billion people lack safe drinking water provides concrete targets for international development cooperation focused on humanitarian outcomes. The joint WHO World Meteorological Organization guidance on workplace heat stress provides evidence-based strategies that governments and employers can implement through heat action plans and safety protocols. This enables individuals to better protect themselves from climate-related health risks while supporting updates to labor codes and occupational safety standards worldwide. September 2025 will likely see continued emphasis on practical, results-oriented cooperation that can demonstrate tangible benefits regardless of broader political relationships. The Security Council deliberations on Iran's sanctions snapback will test whether diplomatic mechanisms can prevent further escalation, or whether regional security arrangements will need to compensate for failed multilateral diplomacy. ASEAN's AI governance frameworks will face their first implementation tests, potentially establishing the regional approach as a model for other technology cooperation initiatives worldwide. The concrete commitments from the August summit, including Malaysia's National Cloud Computing Policy and the 30,000 AI Talent Training Initiative, will need to show measurable progress. Success could inspire similar regional coordination in Europe, Africa, and Latin America. Challenges might reveal limitations in technology governance without global standards. Climate cooperation through direct community financing will expand as the Green Climate Fund's West Papua model demonstrates measurable results. With Indonesia preparing to deploy $90 million in climate funding, this approach may inspire similar direct partnerships in other environmental domains, potentially creating networks of local implementing organizations that can maintain environmental progress independently of national government positions. Economic uncertainty, driven by conflicting institutional projections, will likely push businesses and investors toward regional cooperation mechanisms and alternative financing sources. BRICS initiatives for critical minerals development and expanded South-South cooperation may gain momentum as confidence grows in alternatives to traditional Western-led institutions. Monitor 3 key indicators for September. First, whether UN Security Council action on Iran's sanctions creates diplomatic space for regional security initiatives. Second, how ASEAN's AI summit commitments translate into concrete policy implementations across member countries. And third, whether the Green Climate Fund's direct community model expands to other environmental challenges and geographical areas. The trajectory suggests continued fragmentation of global cooperation, alongside strengthening of regional and direct partnerships. This creates opportunities for targeted progress, while requiring individuals and organizations to navigate increasingly complex, multi-layered cooperation frameworks that vary by region and issue area. August 2025's key insight reveals that effective international cooperation increasingly happens through targeted partnerships rather than universal agreements. When global institutions struggle with consensus, regional coordination, direct community financing, and sector-specific collaboration deliver measurable progress on shared challenges. Take one concrete action this month. Identify a global challenge affecting your community, whether climate change, technology governance, or economic inequality, and research what regional organizations or direct partnerships are addressing it. Understanding these alternative cooperation pathways helps you engage more effectively with international developments that shape your daily life. Here's a question to consider. As global cooperation becomes more fragmented, but potentially more effective through targeted approaches, how will you adapt your professional skills, community engagement, and personal planning to benefit from regional partnerships while navigating the complexity of multiple cooperation frameworks? Next month, we'll explore how these emerging cooperation patterns reshape international development and community resilience strategies. Until then, stay globally connected.